Hello, this is LA Looks from the Crypt, and today we're going to be diving into my Letterboxd account and check out what I've watched during 2022 so far. This is going to be kind of like a monthly occurrence on my channel. I just thought it'd be kind of weird if I just started with a March recap. So we are starting from the beginning, from January to now, and then from here on out, it's going to be a thing I do monthly. I just thought it'd be like a fun way to kind of showcase what I've been watching, movies that I don't necessarily need a fully dedicated review. Things I'm seeing in the movie theater as they come out, because I do go to the movie theater for all new releases if I can, and along with any non-horror I'm watching, which does happen in this household from time to time. And with that being said, grab a drink, grab a snack, and keep on watching. First off, we're starting off with For the Sake of the Vicious. Came out in 2020. I give this a 1.5. It's on Shudder. I did not care for this movie. I mostly checked it out because I saw a lot of horror publications like talking about it and things like that, so I was interested. However, this movie was just not very good. The plot follows a nurse on Halloween night. She is supposed to come home and go get her kid from the kid's dad, spend Halloween night together, trick-or-treating, watching movies, etc. However, that plan is disrupted once she gets home, and a man is being held captive who is her landlord, and then the man who is holding him captive in her home is somebody from her past. She had cared for his daughter in the hospital prior to this. We watch this story unfold as there are random people, intruders, coming in and attacking the three throughout the night. This movie just didn't really have a plot that made a whole lot of sense once we kind of got into it. It was pretty devoid of a plot and any kind of sense to be made. It did get a half star, an additional half star for me for the blood and gore. It was pretty hyper violent, which I did like. It had a lot of action. However, that was used in substitution of a plot, and it just didn't work out. That works if that's what the movie is there for, a lot of exploitation films, extreme cinema, etc. However, this movie was still trying to do something that I couldn't properly execute, so that's why it got 1.5 for me. Next up, we have Scream from 2022, the new one that just came out. This bitch got 5 stars from me. It should come to no surprise that this was probably my most anticipated movie of the year, seeing as I got this bad boy on my arm here, which has been reworked numerous times. This tattoo is actually high-key cursed, but nonetheless, I do have a Ghostface tattoo. This is one of my favorite franchises. I am absolutely obsessed, so I was really looking forward to this movie. I feel like there is no need to really explain a Scream plot, but I will anyways. It takes place 25 years after the original murders, with a new set of people who are somehow loosely connected to the original Woodsboro murders. Our originals from, the first time, Sydney, Gale Weathers, Dewey, etc., they come to help aid the new teens in fighting Ghostface. No cap, I'm not bullshitting. This movie had it all for me. I laughed. I cried. I was at the edge of my fucking seat during this shit. I fucking loved it. And I know a lot of people did not like this recent addition to the franchise, but what I am going to say is that this movie was just not fucking for you. This movie, Scream 5, was made for the diehard fans out there like myself and many others who know the ins and outs of the entire franchise and live for it. Because that's exactly what it is. It was a movie for the fans, and the true fans at that. It was brutal. It was fucking funny. It was still carried its meta-ness that the franchise is originally known for, but it brought to the modern scape of horror. I don't know what to say. This movie just did not miss at all. And big props to Radio Silence for taking on such a fucking huge task, which is giving us a new Scream movie and making it fucking awesome. This movie is currently streaming on Paramount Plus, but I saw it in theaters. Next, we have Perfect Blue from 1997. I gave this 4.5 stars. This is a very awesome anime. I rented it from Amazon Prime. It's not currently streaming anywhere for free, but it was only $2 to $3 when I did rent it. Perfect Blue is about Mina, who is a pop star, who is a part of like a pop group of girls, and basically she wants to shed away from her squeaky clean good girl image and pursue a career as an actress. And with that comes, that sort of fame comes with like obsessive fans and stalkers. She has an obsessive fan that doesn't like the fact that she is trying to move on and do something different from her group, and believes that she's kind of like soiling her virgin like presence. Perfect Blue is honestly just a beautifully illustrated anime. It's a psychological thriller is how I best describe it, with a powerful commentary on patriarchal violence. And this is a movie that I would also say is best if you go into it not knowing much about it, so I'm going to leave it at that. Next here we have Jackass Forever. I gave this bitch 5 stars from 2022. It is currently streaming on Paramount Plus, but I saw it in the theaters when it came out. Along with Jackass Forever, I also watched Jackass 1, 2, 2.5, 3, and I haven't watched 3.5 again for the rewatch, but I also did watch the original MTV series, which are all on Paramount Plus right now. I'm not gonna lie, I was a little nervous going into this one, a little bit hesitant, just because the guys are old now. It is 21 years past when the first Jackass movie came out, so I wasn't sure how to feel, especially knowing that we're missing the CKY crew. So no Bam Margera, no Phil, April, Raytheon, like any of those guys at all. But with that being said, though, this movie did not hold back. Age does not fucking matter when it comes to the men of Jackass, to say the least. I also love all the new Jackasses we got, like Zackass, and then we brought Jasper and Tyler, the creator from Loiter Squad, which was super exciting to see those guys, on top of having our first female Jackass. It was just awesome. That I feel like, you know, a lot of us, like, kind of like latchkey kind of kids, like, grew up with Jackass being like, I don't know, like feeling like Steve-O and Johnny Knoxville were like our like weird uncles kind of thing, and we like grew up with these guys, so it was really awesome to see them still doing what they fucking do, in addition to falling in love with the new cast. And I mean, obviously, when it comes to like a Jackass movie, we're here to get a great laugh and like have a good time. But the thing about these movies that I really love is that you see true camaraderie on the screen with them, and you can absolutely feel the love in the room that everybody has for each other, and it translates past that screen, and you feel it, and it just feels awesome. Personally, it just kind of makes me want to tear up just to see like something so cool like that. Next on our list, we have Kite from 1998. I gave this 4 stars. It is streaming on Tubi. I know there is a sequel called Kite Liberator, which I have not watched. Also, there is an American live-action adaptation starring like Samuel L. Jackson. Personally, I have no intentions of watching. It seems entirely unnecessary considering... I'll get into the plot of Kite, but it is very similar to a movie like Leon the Professional, which fucking slaps. So I don't really see how this is necessary when that movie already exists. I also must preface when getting into this, because I was so confused when reading Letterboxd reviews, because everybody's like talking about like all the like sex and how it's like pornographic and things like that. There are 2 cuts. I watched the theatrical cut. There is like an unrated cut, which is like more or less like a hentai, which I did not view. So that is my opinion given which take I watched. Kite follows an orphan girl, a schoolgirl named Sawa, and she has been taken under the wing of 2 corrupt like detectives who were present when her parents were murdered brutally, and they have taken her under her wing and have taught her how to be an assassin, and she is an assassin against the elite like pedophiles, rapists, sex offenders in general, just general shitty people. Needless to say, I love a good revenge film, of course, especially with, you know, badass girls ridding the earth of the scum that is here. It's a hyper-violent anime, very straightforward and extremely badass. I cannot recommend it enough. It's also pretty short. It's like less than an hour long, maybe like 45 minutes or so. I'm gonna need to take a drink before this one. So, next we have is Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2022, a Netflix original, currently streaming on Netflix. I gave this bitch 1 star. To be fair, I would give it 0 stars if I could. I fucking hated this movie. I kind of already was hesitant when the trailer came out because I noticed it looks and is shot like a musical was kind of my first thing. I was like, this looks like fucking high school. Like, yeah, that's what we call High School Musical. It looks like that, like, and very Disney and fluffed up. They like Netflixified it. And if you watch any other Netflix original horror, like Fear Street, like any of those movies, they do like a thing to it. They make everything quirky and like haha funny, like cute, along with just making things look fucking bad. For example, a big qualm I had with this movie is that it looks like a set. Every place you're in, it looks like a set and super clean and pristine. I didn't like the plot. I hate the way it looked. They tried to make Leatherface a character that's not Leatherface. We're used to Leatherface being like a low IQ, like dude who's being kind of controlled by his family, the Sawyer family, and they're in control of what he just kind of going wild. You know, we know a good old Leatherface swinging his chainsaw around in like a cornfield, and not somebody who's really completely, you know, gonna be like sneaking around and things like that. They try to like make him into a character kind of like the Shape, like Michael Myers. In addition to making Leatherface like Michael Myers, we get like a Laurie Strode-esque character, which personally I think Laurie Strode's a fucking badass. I love that bitch. But Texas Chainsaw Massacre, all the films have always been about the Sawyer family and Leatherface. They are not about the, you know, the survivors or the victims whatsoever. So having this character felt really weird because it was like, what, like, who's that, and like, why should I fucking care? You know what I mean? In the trailer, you know, Leatherface gets canceled or whatever. Haha, funny. I'll play the scene here.
Try anything and you're canceled, bro.
Oh, fuck.
So I thought maybe we're gonna take on like a new take that was like well, not a new take, so considering Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 is like fucking hilarious, and so is Next Gen. Like, those movies are fucking hilarious. So I was hoping maybe we're gonna take like that kind of take, but no, it was just kind of like a weird thing that happened, and like the movie has a very serious tone overall. Our worst offense here is the fucking CGI, like blood and gore, like nothing will take me out of a movie more than that, and I just don't see the fucking purpose. Well, I know it's cheaper, but it's fucking bullshit. That's what I'll tell you. So I have an in-depth review of these movies up on my channel, but next up is the Vomit Gore trilogy, which range between 1 to 2 stars all across the board. I'd say overall for me, they get 2 stars, and the trilogy is comprised of Slaughtered Vomit Dolls, Regurgitate Sacrifice, and Slow Torture Puke Chamber. All I am really going to say here is that since I do have a full video on these movies that I recommend checking out if you are interested. However, what I'm going to say here for a small snippet, since I already did, is that there are these movies are very divisive in the sense that there are two people. You are either somebody who thinks that these movies are fucking awesome, like an art house masterpiece, etc., or you're somebody who thinks it is just pornographic trash with no artistic merit. I do not fall under either of these categories. So for me, I'm somewhere in between. I believe these movies deserve some respects and have their own merits in the sense that you see effects in these movies, and this is true for a lot of the more underground extreme cinema, like August Underground, like fucking anything from Putrid Productions, so on and so forth. You will see effects that you do not see in mainstream movies that blow that shit out the water. Like, that's all I'm gonna say on that, and it's super impressive, and like, you know, that's likely where most of their budget went towards, was towards making those effects, but it is super respectable in that sense, and I can appreciate it for that. Along with the fact that all the vomit in these movies are real, which is another thing that I can appreciate as like horror fan to horror fan. Just seeing somebody be able to have dedication like that to create a movie that they want to create, big props for that. However, at the end of the day, we have a non-linear plot, nauseating sound design and editing, fantastic effects. However, it does border being pornographic at times, which, if that's your thing, if you like vomit, these are the movies for you. These movies, of course, are not streaming anywhere based on what I just fucking said. funny enough, they used to be on Netflix like 10 years ago, and that's how I first got exposed to these movies. However, clearly Netflix would never consider having something like that on their platform now. I believe they are on ftfmovies.com. Not 100% sure on that, but I have the DVD, so that's how I watch them. You can basically watch nearly any extreme film you want on ftfmovies.com. Now we have The Curse from 2022. I give this movie 3 stars. It is currently streaming on like some, well, it's not streaming, it's more so you can pay to rent it for like a fuck ton of money, like $20 on all those platforms. However, I saw it in theaters. So this movie takes place in the old teen hundreds, as I like to call it. If you're my friend, you're familiar with the old teen hundreds. If you're new here, you're gonna get used to hearing about the old teen hundreds. That's the way I describe any movie taking place way back when. Like, so this takes place in the old teen hundreds. A colonizer more or less slaughters a Roma clan, which brings upon a curse on him and his people. Fair enough, right? Overall, I did really enjoy this movie. I really love the somber and overall gloomy tone of it. It was very pretty. I like the cinematography. However, at times it seemed like there's a filter on it, which I didn't really like because we already accomplished something awesome without that. And that was kind of just the overall qualm with the movie in general, is them doing things like that. For example, my major complaint here is that we did have the amazing use of practical effects that were absolutely fucking awesome. However, we had that in conjunction with CGI. And as we know, when you have both, it's a shit show. So, I know I say I fucking hate CGI, but if you're gonna do CGI, leave it at that. Because for the very reason, when you have something to compare it to, it looks that much worse when it comes to gore and things like that. Whereas if you just have it standalone CGI effects, you don't have something to compare it to, so it kind of passes by. Or at times it felt like it held back in ways in terms of action and even like, just the natural progression of the story. But I still did like it and thought it was worth watching. Next, we have Halloween Party from 2019. I gave this movie 2 stars. It's currently streaming on Tubi and Amazon Prime. Not gonna lie, I kind of like completely forgot I watched that movie. It was like a take it or leave it kind of thing. Like, I'm not mad that I watched it, but I'm not gonna watch it again. The story is about one thing that fucking annoyed me is that they kept calling it a meme. It's a fucking like chain letter virus kind of vibe. These people are being sent like a chain letter, like a Halloween chain letter that asks, like, with cute animations with like jack-o'-lanterns, witches and shit like that. Ask them what their worst fear is, and you have to be 100% honest and type in what your actual worst fear is. Otherwise, you will die, and you die at the hands of your worst fear. This movie was just super like silly and goofy. It was like a bit of a comedy. I'm not offended by it, but I don't really care for it either. And we have Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2003. I give this movie 3 stars. It's currently on Netflix streaming. So this 2003 Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie is a reimagining of the 1974 original version. It's not a perfect movie by any means, but it's still pretty solid overall. We have Leatherface in true Leatherface form, and the Sawyer family being as deranged as ever, which I can get behind. This movie does a really awesome job immersing you into the horror sequences and just immersing you fully into the world that is the world of the deranged Sawyer family. Also, this like era of horror, 2003, early 2000s, you know what I mean? When things were wet, gross, grimy, just fucking yucky all around. I love, because, well, that's what horror, generally speaking, should entail. And having like a certain feeling, and you can imagine this place. That's why I love horror, is because you can put yourself there with the characters. And that's what this movie does. And the era of horror, I just miss it when things were wet and gross like that. This is when when mainstream horror was trying to be more extreme, with like, movies like Saw, Hostel, yada yada yada, all those, like, they're trying to push the limits of the mainstream audiences, and we got awesome movies out of it. I feel like everybody fucking shits on the early 2000s, but I'm like a sucker for that era. Next movie we have on our list is Things from 1989. I gave this movie 5 stars, which comes to no surprise if you watch my review that went up on my channel. It's my most recent upload, which I highly recommend you watching, and I'll have places to click around in here. It's currently streaming on Shudder, and if you've watched it or have watched my review, all I'm going to say is let's do a toast to Things. Simply, Things is known to be one of the worst movies of all time, but also one of my favorite party movies. I try to fucking make anybody I hang out with watch this movie just because it's so awesome. It's just fucking weird, surreal, extremely strange, in addition to just being hilarious. It is a movie that you watch to have a good time. They're Watching from 2016. This movie gets 2 stars. It's currently on Tubi. They're Watching is a found footage horror film following the cast and crew of was it like a home improvement show? Very like TLC, like House Hunters vibes. However, they piss off some European villagers and shit goes fucking wild from there. It's very goofy and charming while successfully building suspense, and you're kind of actually wanting to figure out what happens. It's very mysterious, and the ending goes hard. And if you've seen this movie, you'll know this will maybe give you some solace into like how crazy and bad shit clown shoots it is. I guess there's like people who contributed to the making of this movie that also are in association with like SpongeBob, like the children's TV show. If you watch this movie and are confused by the ending, I hope that makes things click a little bit more as to why it's like that. But this movie's just super funny and fun. I have My Heart Can't Beat Unless You Tell It To. This movie's from 2020. It's currently on quite a few platforms. It's on Tubi, Peacock, and Shudder. Just to preface, I am a big fan of this surgence of like the mumblecore horror movies and like A24 vibes, you know what I mean? So this is a no-brainer for me to check out. This movie, I guess, simply just gives a very intimate and claustrophobic look at a family and watching the family crumble, which a lot of these kind of movies have themes like that. However, it follows a brother and sister who care for their ill younger brother, but the younger brother is ill with vampirism. It is which I think is super interesting to present vampirism and vampires in like a non-sexy, cool light, like how we all get from like Lost Boys, typo negative, other vampire movies, you know what I mean? But as opposed to as like a shitty way to be living, which was a really interesting take. This movie is shot in 20 days, but not once does it feel rushed or anything like that. Also, it was pretty low budget. I do appreciate this movie for being aware of its limitations and knowing what they could and couldn't pull off. This movie easily could have gone down pretty south, but it didn't. It remained pretty solid. They're aware of what they could and couldn't show. There are like times where they alluded to something and they didn't show it to us fully, and I appreciate that because it would have taken us out of it, especially with these kind of vibes of movies. You're not wanting to see some shitty effects that make you laugh. It will take you out of the mood and tone. So some things were left up to the imagination, which I am not mad at in this case, because I know if we did see it, it would have looked like shit, and they didn't show it to us in a purposeful sense. So I gotta give props there for just being fucking aware. Next we have is The Beast Pageant from 2010. I give this movie 4 stars. It's a fun, cute little indie flick. It's currently on YouTube for free, just the full upload. It's a film where you think you're getting one thing, but then you end up with something else. The best way for me to describe it is like Pee-wee's Playhouse meets Eraserhead. Very cool visuals, and I had a lot of fun watching this one. This one doesn't really have much to say about it. I just say watch it and experience it for yourself if you're just trying to kind of watch something a little bit different. And that brings us to our last movie, X from 2022, directed by Ty West. I saw this movie in the theaters. It's still running in the theaters, and if you're anything like me, you're probably really anticipating this movie. I was really stoked. I gave it 4 stars. I'm not gonna lie, this was a very overall really greatly made movie. I can't argue with a movie that's made well, but it did let me down a little bit considering everybody and their mom was hyping it up, in addition to I am a big fan of Ty West's previous works. It is a very well done, very beautiful, great cinematography, which I appreciate. And they nail down the like 70s aesthetic completely. I love the concept of just some people going to go rent, you know, a room to film a good dirty movie. You know what I mean? And the plot is so immersive too, which is something I did really love about it. For like the first hour or so before things really pick up, I forgot I was watching a horror movie in the best way possible. I felt like I was there just to watch a movie about people just trying to make a proper dirty movie, and I was fully immersed in that. I was down to see that movie. And then I was like, oh shit, that's right. I'm watching a scary movie, which is awesome. I really like the practical effects, but I feel like it held back, and like it was kind of weird because I feel like I don't want to do spoilers, so it's kind of hard to talk about this since it is still in theaters and, you know, people probably still haven't seen it. But I don't know, I just feel like it kind of held back at times. Like, when things first start going down, it is very brutal. And then from there on out, there is no tension created, and it's really not that. It doesn't really hit the same. Everything kind of feels a little lackluster with the kills. I'm not trying to say that it was a bad movie. I just wanted a little bit more. The elderly couple that we see in the preview from the beginning, they are pretty creepy. The more and more we get to interact and know with them, the more kind of goofy and like bad the acting gets from the older couple, and I kind of couldn't get into those characters. And a lot of it felt like literally reading lines, you know what I mean? And then one last thing I will say about the elderly couple, which maybe this is like me and a personal problem, but I'll insert photos, but like the elderly watch, I insert photos and I'm like completely fucking wrong, but like the elderly like woman character, I for the life of me could not see this, but to me she looked just like Spike Jonze in Jackass when he's like the old lady with like her tits out and stuff. That's all I could fucking see. It is overall a really good movie. I will say I believe it deserves a second watch from me. So maybe they'll just change my opinion, skew it one way or another, and we'll see. Alright, and then that is everything I've watched from January to March. To be fair, that was like some of like a New Year's resolution for me, was to log everything I watch actually, which I've been really poor about before. So I probably missed some things. So I just went based off of my actual Letterboxd account, which may not be fully accurate for everything I have watched. But from here on out, it will be 100% actually everything I've watched. So we'll see. But yeah, thank you so much if you made this far and are watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what were your most favorite movies you watched at this point of 2022. Is there anything you're anticipating later in the year? Is there anything you recommend just for like a chill, casual night for me? Because I do try to watch a movie a couple times a week. I'm not always successful because it's way easier for me to just zone out and watch YouTube or like put on like Botched or something. But I do try to watch movies, and sometimes it's just really hard for me to pick when I have all of these behind me in addition to more and more shelves, my DVD shelf. I have like every streaming platform, so it does get hard for me to decide. So sometimes if I just have suggestions, it does make it a little bit easier for me to figure out what I watch. So yeah, if you have any suggestions, let me know in the comments and the description. I do always have all my socials in addition to my Letterboxd account. If you want to see what I'm watching in real time, there will be links to that down below. And yeah, thank you guys so much. This is Ellie, Looks from the Crypt, and I am out. And I thought I was done filming, hence why I have the headphones on, because I was editing. I guess I could have taken them off real quick, but I guess just for the sense of fully completing this, I am planning on watching Black Metal Veins tonight and Mean Girls. So there's another two. I will be including this in my next recap, but it is still technically March while I'm watching those, just so you know.